Hi guys, welcome back to the second video in the series that I am making about the archetypes. I've tried to do this intro probably 7 times, and every time it's horrible, and I have word vomit, and nothing makes sense. And the times that I did do well, I either forgot to press record, or there was a really loud noise in the background that ruined it. So I'm trying to just relax and be calm because I'm so frustrated. I need to get into this Taurus archetype. I love this archetype. It's so important. It's so underrated, underappreciated, and we need to talk about it for sure. One thing that I think is really important is, how do I say this? If you came to this video because you're a Taurus sun sign, that's wonderful. This video totally applies to you. We're just going to be talking about the archetypes though, which is super important to understand because it's one thing if you're a Taurus sun, you might also have a Taurus moon, you might have a Taurus Mercury, and you don't have to be a Taurus to have those placements. You can be a Leo and have Taurus placements. You can be any sign and have Taurus placements. So really, chances are this video does apply to you, even if you're not a Taurus. So feel free to pass that message on. Not something a lot of people know about when we're talking about the archetypes. And guess what? Even if you don't have any Taurus placements, you still have a second house. And I know I was trying to make this super beginner friendly, and I didn't want to confuse anyone by getting into the houses. But just trust me, everyone has a second house. Everyone has a Taurus archetype in your chart. And one day I will do a series on the houses, and I'm excited to do that because it's like my favorite part of astrology is talking about the houses and all that jazz. But right now we're not doing that. We are talking about Taurus. So let me see if I can explain this right. The Taurus archetype follows the Aries archetype. It is the sign that comes after it. It is the second sign. This does not take math skills, my friends. It is true. It is the second sign. So in astrology, this second house is called a succedent house. I'm so sorry if you're like anxious that you don't understand this, but just roll with me here. Because it's a succedent house, all that means is that it's really important to the first house. It's really important to your identity. It's really important to the house prior to that because it's fixed. That means that it's stable, or it should be stable, and that if your second house isn't fulfilled, if it isn't happy, if it isn't being worked on, if it's not an active project for you, if it's not being fulfilled, again, as I said, then your identity, the house prior to that, cannot be fully realized. I mean, it's just going to be more difficult for you to understand that. So what is the second house then? And why is it so important to our identities? Why is it so important to this super intrinsic part of ourselves? So in Aries, in the first house, we realize that we have an ego. We realize that we are a manifested person. We realize that we are individuals. So we decide to go on that karmic journey. When we enter Taurus, this is an earth sign. This is the suit of pentacles. This is the tangible reality, the consensus reality, things you can touch, smell, taste, hear, feel. So what does that mean if it's supporting your identity? Well, that's what all of the earth signs are about, is that consensus reality type situation. Realizing that we're tangible physical beings, and all of the earth signs have something to do in the earthly realm. But Taurus is extremely fundamental in this. In Taurus, basically we're realizing that we have a body, that we have a sensory vessel, and that, if we're talking about the developmental journey again, it's like the baby realizes it's a baby and that it can talk and say, oh, look at me, I like cats, and this is my mom, and my name is Tendai because that's my name. So that's where a baby is, say, in one part of its journey. Next part of its journey, say it's a toddler, I don't know. And what is one thing that babies, or toddlers rather, are known for? Well, there's a developmental stage that you guys probably know about, where babies really get into touching things. That's why you have to baby-proof and toddler-proof your house when you have a child, because they're very precocious and they realize that they can touch and explore the world, and they can reach out and grab something and they can say, oh, this is mine. Also realizing that it can own things, that it can have things. And that's why we have to teach children how to share, because they instinctually do not want to. And perhaps, that's a evolutionary survival thing that we don't really share. But now we have societies, now we have civilizations, now we have economies. We have to learn how to share. I think it's probably in the natural human, evolutionary psyche that eventually we do learn how to be diplomatic. But at that age in our development, we do not. That's kind of an instinct that Taurus has. Aries' instinct is to say, this is what I am. Taurus' instinct is to say, this is what I have. But I also want to get a bit deeper with that, because it goes so much deeper than the materialistic label that pop astrology or pop culture likes to put on the Taurus sign. It's absolutely not about materialism. It's absolutely not a materialistic sign in the sense of the buzzword, because in our culture, being materialistic is a buzzword. It is a taboo. It is something that we both shame and we also strive for in secret. It's something that we're obsessed with, is material belongings and material collections and owning things and the concept of it. How do we know if we have enough? How do we know if we have what we need? And this is a very important theme. If I am to sum this up, and if I am to sort of draw you a picture, the deeper meaning of Taurus, if we want to go there, which I do want to go there, Taurus is about making tangible attachments to the world in a way that optimizes our identity, in a way that projects our identity through the things that we own. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds kind of shitty. Does that mean that we have to buy things that speak to our identity and buy things to make us seem like the individuals that we are, to project that into the world? Is that what it's about? No, that's not what it's about. When we talk about owning things, when we talk about being attached to the physical world, what Taurus is also talking about is our gifts. Because what else do we own at this very fundamental level? Well, we own our talents. We own these quirks, we own these things inside of us that make us perhaps different from the next person. One person can be super philosophical, super intellectual, and can learn to read college level by the time they're 7. One person can know how to paint a shockingly realistic portrait, completely artistically gifted at a young age. These are things that I think every single person at some point in their childhood realizes that they have. They might not be these amazing things that I described. These are just kind of stereotypes off the top of my head that I came up with as examples of gifts and talents. But truly, I think that every single person as a child at some point realizes that they have a fascination with something, and they have a propensity, an inner inclination towards a specific thing that perhaps people around them don't understand or aren't as good at. We all have little gifts inside of us, little talents that if we nourish them, we can maybe make money off of them someday. We can maybe have a job, because that's what the archetype wants. It wants us to realize self-esteem. Okay, remember that. It wants us to realize what makes us valuable, because that has a lot to do with our identity. It has a lot to do with our ego. If we are satisfying ourselves by taking up these gifts and talents, by taking up these things that we're passionate about, we can make money off of them. They can usually speak to a vocation. That is something that the Taurus archetype also is very interested in, is this idea of having a vocation, of having a calling, of feeling like you were born to do something because you have these weird talents, you have these mental obsessions, you have these things that fascinate you. And that's what you should be doing to support yourself. Taurus is a fixed sign. It's all about security and having food on the table and having shelter and having central heating and air conditioning. These are things that we need in our lives because if we don't have them, if we're impoverished, say we grow up without basic necessities, we're so focused on being safe on a physically fundamental level that we don't get to realize who we are. We're not safe enough to do that. We're not safe enough to have self-actualization. So this is a new point that I'm going to make. These first 4 zodiac signs have a lot of similarities to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Taurus is like that food, shelter, safety, central heating and air conditioning, just basic physical necessities. Because if we don't have those things, we can't realize who we are as individual people. We don't have enough time to. We don't have enough time to sit and wonder what we're good at and wonder like what makes us unique and what makes us wonderful, because we're stuck to that primal level. We're stuck on that plane of just fighting to get by, just fighting for food, fighting for comfort, working our asses off just so that we can be safe and secure. Okay, and a lot of us in first world countries don't have to worry about that. So a lot of us do have time to realize who we are as individuals. We do have time to take our kids to ballet. We do have, not time, well, yes, we have the financial resources that give us time to realize what our talents are. This is not something to be taken for granted. It is so amazing and it is so fundamental, and you are so lucky if you have food, shelter, safety, water, central heating and air, and you don't have to worry about it. You are so lucky if you live in America. So lucky if you live in Canada. So lucky if you live in one of these nations where you probably just grew up with all that stuff. Because now you're in the position where I can be talking to you about what gifts and talents you have, what makes you unique, little Bobby. I really want you guys to realize that this archetype is not to be taken for granted. It's actually something that a lot of people struggle with. Now, if you have a certain planet in your second house, maybe you didn't grow up with a lot of money, say you have Saturn there, like me. I had all of those things sometimes, but I do not take it for granted because I saw through people who did struggle with this archetype, who did struggle with the second house, through my struggles in the second house, that when people do not have time to sit back and nourish themselves and do what makes them happy because they're too focused on the very noble task of giving themselves and their family basic fundamental security, there is a sadness, there is a depression, and there is a resentment that comes about, because how can you self-actualize if your talents and your gifts and the things that make you excited are just locked away in a basement, dormant and dusty, and no one really cares about them. No one really knows how talented you are. You never had that opportunity to see those things shine. And when you go about the world, your first house, your ego, is just so broken. And it is so, again, as I said, sad. And there might be depression associated with the second house issues. So you have Saturn there. There might be depression if beginner's morning, I'm going a little advanced here. If you have a lot of planets in your first house and no planets in your second house, you might not know what the fuck to do with yourself because you have this super complicated personality, you have this super complicated ego that's interested in so many things because you have a million planets in your first house and your second house is empty. And you only really want to do one thing, and you might not feel like you have the energy to do the a million things that your identity wants you to do. If you want to be a nurse and you want to be a singer and you want to be an environmental forester and you want to be a marine biologist, you can't be all of those things. So that can kind of happen too. If you look at your chart, see what's going on in your second house. But reeling it back into this archetype. Basically, all Taurus wants us to figure out is how do we in a balanced way, in a way that is neither too much or too little, put importance on the way that we attach to the world and the way that we possess things. Because if we are being the more shadowy side of the Taurus archetype, we might never look into ourselves to find that security, to find that value. We might be so obsessed with owning things for two reasons. One, we might be impoverished. We might not be born into the financial circumstances that allow us to realize our gifts and our talents. We might not have been born into a place with good public school systems. We might not have been born into a place that has access to clean water. These things happen in the world. People live those kinds of lives without security. And for that reason, the identity can't be fully realized. Okay, again, we're stuck on that fundamental plane of seeking security. That's the first reason. The second reason, if we're existing in the shadow side of the archetype, either it's around us or we've let it happen, is that we're not looking into ourselves, not because we don't have the time, not because we don't have the resources, but maybe the people who didn't raise us, they didn't teach us to look inside of ourselves. They ignored our gifts and talents. We had gifts and talents and we told them what we were interested in, and it was shut down. It was knocked down. It was told that it was a bad thing, that's not really going to make a lot of money, that it's a waste of time, that it's weird, and you should probably be interested in engineering. That's a cool thing to be interested in because it'll make you a lot of money. But really, you wanted to be a multimedia artist of some sort because you liked to cut up newspapers and make pictures out of print. And you were really good at collaging, but people didn't support you in doing that. So you either never chase after your dreams, you never feed your talents, you never feed your gifts. And in order to find value in our society without doing that, a real easy fix is just to buy the shit that everyone else is buying. Just collect the things that signify to other people that we are valuable, because we don't give it to ourselves. We're not exercising that part of ourselves on our own. So we look outside of ourselves and we say, well, what does everyone else have? This person seems really important. They drive a nice car, they come into work, they have the nicest office space, they seem super happy, they have the handsomest spouse, they're super wealthy. What do they have that I can cop and that I can show to other people? Yeah, I'm on their level. Because in our society, in our Western society, we can play that game. And we can become obsessed with using these physical, tangible signifiers that we're valuable. To show people that we're valuable. To show people that we are worth your time, because look at my shoes. Look at my purse. Look at my car. Look at all of this stuff on me that I own that makes me more important than other people. So that was a lot of what the Taurus archetype has to do with. In a nutshell, what do you own outside of you and inside of you? Do you own too much stuff? Do you not own the right things? Are you not pragmatic in your material possessions? Your material possessions and your physical world should be a reflection of what you're talented at. If you're an artist, why don't you have any tools to produce art? Why are you off buying the newest gadgets? Why are you so concerned about buying clothes every month that look good maybe for like a season, but you could have bought something that was an investment into your talents, into your gifts, and you could have started creating something. And hopefully the goal is, as we get into the other archetypes, is when we learn what our talents are, when we learn what our gifts are, that is hopefully the beginning of the journey to figuring out our calling, and that exists innately, and that we should be able to do that. And we'll get into that in the 6th house, and we'll get into that in the 10th house of establishing our value in the world so that we can self-actualize, so that we don't have to live under false pretenses, and so that our egos don't have to play this game with people, this hide and seek, this game of mirrors and smoke. I believe the phrase is smoke and mirrors, but I said it a little bit differently. So yeah, what are you good at? Taurus wants to know. I forgot to put in here the cards from the Rider-Waite deck that I wanted to associate with Taurus. I was supposed to do that at the beginning, but I totally forgot. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to go ahead and show you. If I were to sum up Taurus with 2 cards from the Tarot Rider-Waite deck, I would use the Magician, because he is the 2nd card in the Major Arcana, and he's evolved past the Fool. He's evolved past the Fool. He's got that spirit energy, but he needs to do something with it. And so as you can see in the picture, he's got the 4 elements there. He's got the cups, the sword, the wand or baton, whatever it is for you. And he's got the pentacle. He's got all of the 4 elements. He has the infinity sign over his head. And he's going to use it to create something. He's going to use that spirit force to propel himself somewhere, to propel him to wherever he wants to be. He's creative, and he's smart, and he's crafty, and that's going to eventually lead us down a path where we can perhaps hone a skill. But it's important just to realize that you have everything inside of you. You just have that fire, that spirit energy. You can come up with something. Just try everything first. Try looking into those 4 elements. What is calling you? What is your inclination? What are you naturally drawn to? And as you experiment in life, particularly if you're younger, but really at any point in your life, there's always going to be something new to learn. And the Magician is that for me. He is always learning, and he is creative and crafty, just like Taurus. I also have the Queen of Pentacles here. There she is. A beautiful sort of Venusian archetype to me. I don't know if Venus is technically even associated with her, but when I look at her, I see something very Venusian. She's got these creatures around her. She's got these flowers, and she's got this spring of water in the background. There's a mountain. She's sitting in this absolutely decadent chair, and she's contemplating her 1 pentacle, even though she knows that she's the queen of them. So if she's the Queen of Pentacles, how come we're only seeing her with 1? Well, the idea is she's got her bag secured. We don't have to worry about the Queen of Pentacles. She has all of the security that she needs. She definitely has her food and her shelter and her safety and her clean water. She has all of these fundamental necessities, and she's just kind of chilling, just kind of taking it in. It's this Venusian thing of I am surrounded by beauty. I don't have any more than I need, and I don't have too little of anything. I'm secure. I'm fine. I'm contemplating this tangible physical life. I'm contemplating this consensus reality because I can, because my basic needs are met, and now I can focus on the beautiful parts of life. I can be beautiful, and I don't have to do anything more to prove to anyone else that I am. I just am. That's what the Queen of Pentacles feels like to me. So that's it. That's our Taurus archetype. If you have any questions, let me know below in the comments. Please subscribe if you want to get notified when the rest of the videos come out about the other 3 archetypes. And I hope this was helpful to you. Again, super cool archetype. It's one of my favorites. Check out your second house in your natal chart. What's going on there? What's going on in your first house? Maybe you're going through an identity crisis. If you're like my age, so you're a millennial. Maybe you're going through an identity crisis. You don't quite know what to do. Like, the times have changed so much from when our parents were our age. The idea of a career is so much more nebulous and so much more obtuse than it ever was. It is so much more overwhelming to find something to be good at, but also there's so many more different and unorthodox things that we can do with our life. And maybe you're wondering, what the fuck is that? Because I'm interested in so many things. That's such a common thing for people our age to go through, is not quite knowing how to find security, not quite knowing how to create a financially, physically stable life for ourselves. And if you're curious about that, I would definitely consider looking at your chart. Look at your second house, look at your first house. And if you still can't figure it out, shoot me a message or shoot me a comment, and I would be happy to read it for you. So thank you again. I will see you next time with a video on Gemini. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.